There's a lot of history on this field when it comes to Supernatural. They've shot here on multiple occasions, starting all the way back in Season 1. The farmhouse having been used on multiple occasions, and this field holding a very significant importance, because this is where the show was originally supposed to end. This is where the big showdown takes place during the climax of Swan Song, which some would say is where Supernatural actually ended. And everything that followed afterwards can either be taken as literal fanfiction, or, and this is a theory that I actually quite enjoy, an illusion conjured up in Sam's mind to block out the horrors of being trapped in the cage. But before we get into that stuff, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why this episode is so damn good. This is my review for Swan Song. Rarely ever do shows get to do an ending right. Rarer still when a show gets to have multiple ending scenarios in its lifetime. Supernatural, on paper, had 3 definitive moments when the show ended. The first and the most recent being the actual series finale at the end of Season 15, which happened exactly a year ago today. The second being the end of Season 11, which was the showrunner at the time, Jeremy Carver's intended ending, until the show was renewed for another season, which led him to leaving the show halfway through, and having Andrew Dabb take up the showrunner duties until the show's Season 15 conclusion. But for most, especially those who had watched the show through its first 5 seasons episodically, the actual ending would of course be Swan Song. Admittedly, this is a subject that has been talked about repeatedly, both by myself and other Supernatural related YouTube channels. But on paper, this is still the best ending the show ever had. And it's not just because it was at the time the battle to end all battles, but because it was the accumulation of 5 long years of storytelling and character building between Sam and Dean. This episode wasn't just about the challenge of putting Lucifer, the literal embodiment of evil, back in his cage, but also the relinquishing of brotherly duties. This was about Sam fully taking control of his destiny, and Dean accepting that Sam was a overgrown man, and letting go of his obsessive nature when it came to Sam's safety and well-being. Sam acknowledges his responsibility for letting Lucifer out and wants to right that wrong by putting him back in. This episode was about the brothers truly being able to put the betterment of others before each other. As Dean reflects to Sam, it isn't just about accepting the fact that Sam has matured and can make his own decisions, but also about relinquishing the duty he has placed upon himself for nearly his entire life. Hours before Swan Song was to air on May 13th, 2010, I was anxious, curious, and overwhelmed that the show was coming to what I thought was its ending. I would find out about the Season 6 renewal later that night, but at the time, I thought this was going to be the end of my favorite show. So when it started with the archive footage of the 100 millionth car ever produced rolling off the Chevrolet lot, it probably gave a few Supernatural viewers a concerned feeling. Of course, the Impala had always been a central figure in the show's legacy, but starting the supposed battle for the planet with a mini-documentary puzzled even me. But as we would see, they were talking about the very element that would save the world. The literal home for our 2 characters would come to their aid when they would least expect it. Having exhausted every other option, the brothers have come to the conclusion that the only way to stop Lucifer and the apocalypse is for Sam to say yes to Lucifer, temporarily overpower him, and using the rings from the 4 horsemen, jump back into the pit. Even though this goes against every fiber in Dean's being, he concedes to the plan.
He gets in. You fight him tooth and nail, you understand? Keep swinging. Don't give an inch. Yes, sir.
It should be noted that despite the overwhelming bleakness of this episode, the finale is still able to pepper in 2 very small anecdotes of the show's trademark humor, both of which are from Castiel.
Oh, I'm supposed to lie.
After consuming literal gallons of demon blood, seriously, there were several 4-liter milk jugs in there. I get sick from drinking a 2-liter of chocolate milk quickly. I can't imagine having 16 liters of demon blood and you would go over well. Upon entering the building, they find Lucifer at the brink of breaking Mark's body down to ash. Despite the look of his meat suit, Lucifer is still all aware as he reveals that he knows what Sam's plan is. Despite this, Sam tries to maintain his resolve, all the while Dean's hope is visibly wavering. However, in an unexpected twist, Lucifer isn't vengeful. In fact, he's actually delighted. Very much in the fashion of a conniving fallen angel, he offers a duel that only the devil could devise.
What do you say, Sam? A fiddle of gold against your soul says I'm better than you.
With no other option on the table, Sam says yes and lets Lucifer in. Dean casts the rings and opens the gate to let Sam walk through until the horrible truth reveals itself. Lucifer has taken control of Sam, and after a short farewell, Dean is left alone, knowing that there are no more backup plans. They, for all intents and purposes, have completely failed. What follows is an insightful conversation between Lucifer and Sam via a broken mirror. The devil, doing what he does best, continually spinning a yarn with his silver tongue, coercing Sam out of his resolves of safety, his sense of family, and allowing him to divulge into his basic violent instincts. Confronting Sam with his past, both through his own choices and those of which Lucifer held sway over. Building further on the mythos of Sam's supposed destiny, while hearkening back to elements of conflict Sam and Dean had between each other during their earlier upbringing. And just pointing this out, there is better blocking and visual direction in this conversation Jared Padalecki is having, literally with himself, than anything the latter seasons of this show would ever produce. The conversation between Sam and Dean as he was dying could definitely have used some of this camera work to help pull that scene out of its overly drawn-out mediocrity. This scene between Sam and Lucifer is so bleak, yet so well constructed. It's one of my favorite parts of the episode. Chuck's intermittent tales of the history of the Impala also serve as respectful fan service for avid watchers of the show. The means and how it's made its way through the world, how unlikely interactions led it to John Winchester, and becoming a permanent fixture in the Winchester family. When shows try to do their own version of fan service, I always come back to these segments from Swan Song. They aren't obvious or cheap attempts, they are subtle and faithful callbacks to moments of the show, all the while adding new ones about the brothers' history. The Lego pieces in the car fans, the toy soldiers in the ashtrays, the carved initials in the back serve as newly established backstory, but it makes sense in how we have seen these characters behave and interact with each other. Because these are things brothers would do. This notion is further convicted as Chuck recalls the journeys and adventures the brothers would go on in between hunts. Whether it was driving several days to a Jayhawks game, or simply staring up at the stars all night, they were never deterred with their situation. That while they never had a roof and four walls, they never were in fact homeless.
That's a good line.
These Chuck segments finally connect with the main story when Dean reaches out to him in a means of trying to find one final strand of hope in an ever-growing well of hopelessness, even when faced with the possibility that he may not be able to break through to Sam.
The only thing that you're gonna see out there is Michael killing your brother.
Well, then I ain't gonna let him die alone.
This leads to the graveyard in Lawrence, where it all started and will now end. Lucifer meets Michael on the christened battlefield, and despite the fact that these are actors now portraying completely different characters, the dialogue does a fantastic job at establishing who these two are, what they mean to each other, and how they are constrained by their ideals.
Part of me wishes we didn't have to do this.
Yeah. Me too.
Then why are we?
Oh, you know why.
In an incredibly short amount of time, we are able to sympathize with these two and even acknowledge the gruesome realities they are both about to accept. It's another example of just how well written, yet entrenched in the ideals that Supernatural has been exuding for the past 5 years. Contrasting the Winchester family dynamics with that of archangels and God himself, in concept is pretty ballsy, but they pull it off.
Then I'd like to see you try.
And just before the battle commences, one of the best musical interruptions ever happens.
Hey.
What happens next is, in my honest opinion, the best 5 minutes and 43 seconds Supernatural ever produced. Swan Song is the pinnacle episode that it is for what happens right here. Everything this episode, this season, this show has been building up to finally comes to be. And it has accumulated into this fight between two of the most powerful beings in existence that we currently know of at the time of airing, and a simple yet stubbornly determined human who is about to walk into the middle of it in one last desperate attempt to stop it. Whenever I talk to anyone about this episode, I'm talking about this moment right here. I literally watched this entire part in full every time I start it. It's just that damn good. Unfortunately, I can't do it here, otherwise I might as well call my channel Wayward Winchester. But I'll do my best to still convey my point.
We need to talk.
Apologies do nothing to sway these two in their blood rage, but a well-placed Molotov sure does.
Hey, ass butt.
And this is the last joke of the episode, because if things weren't already grim enough, it gets so much worse.
Bruh.
When Jared turns towards Dean, it's menacing. All the understanding, the sympathizing is gone. There is nothing but the rage of the devil, and Jared portrays this in an incredibly intimidating way. And just to make things a little bit worse,
No!
as Lucifer begins to break Dean's body down with furious blows, it looks pretty goddamn hopeless.
And he's gonna feel the snap of your bones.
But even as he is powerless to defend himself, Dean assures Sammy that he won't leave him. Through broken teeth and his mouth gushing with blood, he makes the effort to let Sam know he isn't alone.
I'm not gonna leave you.
This very moment is an opposite of many of the interactions we have had between these two. When Sam and Dean parted ways temporarily in Season 1, or when they came to a head at the end of Season 4, Episode 21, or when Dean thought it was best for them to part at the beginning of Season 5. Through their travels, their ideologies have clashed. Ever since they were young, because of their difference in upbringings, the two have butted heads despite always wanting to look out for each other. The conflict between them wanting to live their own lives while still trying to protect each other has been a constant and often deadly conundrum between these two, despite their best intentions. Sam left the family because he wanted to experience a life on his own and try to obtain a sense of normalcy that he never had. Dean, having only briefly experienced it before his mother died, is trying to keep what he has left together, going to the extent of unintentionally damaging this very ideal all the more. But when every last chip is on the table and Dean knows he has no chance in hell of victory, he still stays. All of the previous conflicts, arguments, and disagreements now seem trivial. What matters most, what has always mattered above all else, is his brother Sam. The emotion I feel when Dean says,
I'm not gonna leave you,
breaks me nearly every time. This particular connection is all the more powerful to me because of the relationship I have with my younger brother. We became children of divorce at a young age, to the point where he doesn't even remember what it was like when my parents were together. I still have fleeting memories of that, and it definitely reflects upon how we both grew up. But while we have our own disagreements and squabbles, we have been there for each other. It's that sentimental feeling entwined with the actions being portrayed on screen that makes this moment all the more impactful to me. The use of nothing but the wind and the moments from their adventures throughout the show hit like an atom bomb going off in slow motion. And that's how you do a proper flashback memoriam, looking at you inherit the earth. Sam breaks Lucifer's hold and takes back control, and lets Dean know that it's okay.
it's gonna be okay.
With one last look at him, Sam lets go and falls into the pit, bringing a very much unwilling Michael down with him. And in all honesty, if you knew what was going to happen with his character in Season 15, you would feel all the more sorry for him, and probably wish he had just stayed down there. Then the pit closes. Lucifer is back in his cage. The world has been saved from annihilation. Yet when we look back at Dean, we see what that victory cost him. As Dean looks down on the rings, Castiel returns with his powers restored. After healing Dean and reviving Bobby, Chuck reflects on the concepts of endings. This is when the writing becomes so literal. It's as much Kripke talking to the supernatural fandom as it is Chuck writing an ending to his novel series. On second thought, I'm pretty certain it is Kripke literally talking to the supernatural fandom. And in most cases, this would come off as extremely pretentious. But Kripke avoids that, just as he has throughout this entire episode. It's that level of writing that elevates this finale above and beyond. That reflection on the show's history, the relationship between the brothers, the car, and Destiny itself. It wasn't full of over-the-top fight scenes or intuitive mind games. It defied expectations and delivered something unique, all the while being incredibly loyal to the core concept of the show.
You got what you asked for, Dean. No paradise, no hell. Just more of the same. What would you rather have? Peace or freedom?
We get narrated conclusions about Bobby and Dean's current state of mind before arriving at Lisa's door. Chuck reflects one last time on the road so far and what led to this conclusion. Kripke reflects on the show in a passive way, on how it grew into what it became and how it shaped himself as a creator. He even adds an extra level of ambiguity with Chuck's exit, reflecting upon his own exit from the show. Endings are hard. They are especially more so when you have to come to the end of the story you started and the conclusion you foresaw, but you can't really end it. Not yet, anyways. But right at this moment, it's perfect. The story has concluded in a way that, while not entirely a happy ending, has done great justice to the Winchester brothers and their trials thus far. It's why I, on many occasions, stop the episode right here in my mind. Because what follows leads us down a road of unknowns, disappointments, hope renewed, and ultimately vanquished, and the constant question of what if it had all ended right here. Because as we all know, it most certainly did not.
Surprise, motherfucker!
The title of Swan Song for this episode is quite literal, not just in terms of the season finale or the end of the story we had been on for the past 5 seasons, but it is also reflecting on Eric Kripke finishing the story he started. This is the last episode he would act as showrunner for, so he wanted to end on a bang, with the best episode he could possibly create for Supernatural, the be-all and end-all. This is just as much Kripke's Swan Song as it is Supernatural's. He didn't get to end the show entirely, ergo his reflection on why endings are hard, especially when they don't ever really end. But despite the last 10 seconds, Swan Song still stands as the coup de grace of the Supernatural legacy. The accumulation of 5 years of solid writing, character building, and world development came together in terrific fashion. But as I have seen rewatching and reviewing the first 5 seasons of Supernatural, I can definitely attest that this show got better with every season. There are a few shows that can say that, there are even fewer who got through the 2007 writer's strike unscathed, but Supernatural was able to prevail and create one of its most underrated seasons. It all built towards forwarding the quality of the show and building a compelling narrative that would ultimately end in Season 5. While a new legacy of the show would take its place, both for better and for worse. But deep in my heart, I will always recognize Swan Song for exactly what it is, the Swan Song of a writer's creation. Thank you guys so much for watching this review, and thank you for everyone who has been following me for the last 5 seasons. I know I took way longer than I should have to do the first season, but honestly it's because of you guys watching these reviews that got me to this point. And I definitely want to give a shout out to my Gold Snicker Bar supporters on Patreon. Amber Hatanaka, Emilio Rodriguez, Joe Balashi, Mark Wilmont, and Shannon Miller, as well as my Silver Snicker Bar supporter, Andra Brandon. Thank you all so much for your personal support. And if you would like to support me on Patreon and get early access to reviews and videos like these, take a gander at it. I've got a link in the description below. It's because of you guys that I have enjoyed rewatching Supernatural and talking about it with you. Not only has it been fun for me to rewatch these episodes, but also to talk about them with friends and family who watch the show and reflecting on favorite episodes, favorite moments, and just parts that we genuinely loved. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There are some things that I kind of wish I could have done more. For instance, I actually had a plan to film on the farm that the finale was shot on. I've even worked on that farm myself several times, but unfortunately, due to Supernatural superfans who have illegally trespassed on this farm after finding it and causing massive headaches for the property owner, she declined having me on the property to do this filming for her own sake, which I completely 100% understand. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, leave a like, and if you're interested in more, subscribe. If you guys want to check out my reviews for Supernatural seasons 1 to 5 or 11 to 15, you can check out the playlist at the end of the video or in the description below. I will be starting season 6 in time, but I'm just taking a little break from Supernatural just as I just want to have a little bit of time with myself and my family during this holiday season. But once again, thank you to everyone who has watched any of my Supernatural reviews. I really appreciate your guys' time and want to listen to me talk about a show that I love. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.
Thanks for watching the video. My name is Nitz, and you might remember me from the animated cult classic TV show Undergrads. It's been a while, but I'm happy to say the Clique is finally getting back together in an all-new movie, thanks to a successful Kickstarter campaign. But we are still asking for your support. To see any and all updates about the upcoming Undergrads movie, be sure to check out and like the Bring Back Undergrads Facebook page. And with any luck, we'll see you guys soon.